Jason. Let's get started. So our topic tonight is the new club coaching program that's just went into effect in July. So you may or may not be familiar with the old program. Paul's going to shed some light on the new program, how it's different than the old program, and there's a required club coach module. Hopefully, if you saw my email on Friday, you've had an opportunity to go out and check it out. But if not, we're going to proceed anyway. So I'd like to tell you a little bit about our presenter tonight. It's Paul Arnhold, and he's been with Toastmasters since 2008. He currently has 3 DTMs and almost finished with a 4th. He has served clubs in 3 different districts, District 62, 63, and now with us here in District 35. He's been a member of the trio. He's been a successful club coach, which means taking a club from, just about ready to fold to President's Distinguished in less than a year. Quite impressive. He's also been a recipient of the club coach efforts for the club that he belonged. He has served as a mentor to district leaders. He started several clubs, has been involved or led 4 Speechcraft programs and the Youth Leadership Program. Paul's been published in Toastmaster Magazine, and he's a regular trainer and a workshop presenter in those in many Toastmaster events. So as a reminder, what our format's all about, we're going to have a half an hour of Paul speaking to us as a presentation on this topic, and then a half an hour where it's going to be open for discussion on this topic of club coaching. So as Paul's going through his presentation, keep that in mind, save up your questions, and we'll have a nice discussion after that. With that, I'd like to turn it over to our presenter tonight, Paul Arnhold.
All right. Welcome this evening. Even though you might have been bummed out today with the football game, hopefully tonight won't be that way. Anyway, once upon a time, every club in our district had at least 20 members. So what happened? Because today, nearly 2/3 of our clubs actually qualify for a club coach. And to qualify for a club coach, it is now 3 to 12 members, 12 or fewer members, has to be a minimum of 3 in order to qualify for a club coach. So again, what happened? If I took a poll right now, I bet you the majority of everybody would probably blame COVID for it. But you know what? I was part of a club that actually grew during COVID, and the club that I'm in now, Menominee Falls, Susan, if I'm correctly, it grew as well, didn't it? And that's all because of leadership. It's all about being intentional and some other things that we're going to talk about later. 2 years ago, I had a carcinoid tumor removed. See, I had no idea that something was growing in me until I had some routine scope work done. And even though the surgeon was sure he removed everything, my oncologist still follows up with CAT scans and blood tests. So I bring that up because I have a question for you. How's your club's health? Perhaps there's a cancer growing that you are clearly not aware of. We are going to talk briefly about the importance of yearly checkups. They're called moments of truth. In the follow-up actions, a club success plan. Yet when something seems still a little bit off, and it's happened to me with a club that I was a recipient of having a club coach for, sometimes clubs need to call in the specialist. We call them club coaches, and that could be you. But before we get into this really involved change in our system, I think it's important to be upfront with you and quite frank. There's a reason that sometimes districts have a difficulty finding club coaches. And I believe because there's not a guaranteed outcome. You could be with a club from 6 months to 2 years, and sometimes that could be renewed as well, but there's no guarantee that the club was going to end up being distinguished. And sometimes people don't see the value in just coaching, the growth that can happen for yourself as well as the clubs. You know, on the other end of the spectrum, if you become a area director, whether you're a fantastic area director like Susan is, or one that hasn't even visited a club this year, hardly puts any effort in it, at the end of the year, you'll still get credit for being an area director. But I don't want that to stop you, because what happens when you are a club coach, it goes beyond all comprehension as far as the value that you receive. And I'm going to tell you later about the club that I coached successfully. It also one that we were a recipient of a club coach. So what we're going to do here is it's going to be easier for me just to highlight some of the materials that I put together. I took the module twice, once for credit and to learn, and the second time so that I could write type 6 pages of notes for this. Fortunately for you, I've narrowed that down by quite a bit, because I would expect everyone on this call, if you have not done so yet, you will go to the link that was provided for you and take that module. It doesn't take that long. It's very insightful. So are we ready? All right. And first, I've got some great news for you, because now, let's see. I have to look at my notes. All right. Now, this session today is not only for those who are considering becoming club coaches, but it's beneficial to everybody in the district, including area directors, division directors, the trio, everyone involved, as well as curious members as well. Because if you ever do become a club coach, you'll have to take the module anyway. So you might as well get it over with now and get credit for it. Plus, you're going to learn, because anytime something is new, there's going to be a plethora of questions, and at least you can give them a good answer. So let's start with who qualifies to be a club coach. Well, you must have completed a minimum of a level 2 in any path, or have an advanced leader bronze or advanced communicator bronze from the legacy program. And you are not currently coaching any other club, you can only coach one at a time, are not a current member of the club they wish to coach, and have not been a member of the club for the previous 6 months. Now let's talk about appointing people to be club coaches. Well, I'll point out when there are changes. Officially, World Headquarters appoints individuals to be club coaches for the credit via application submitted by any trio member of the district. It used to be club growth director or district director. Now, all 3 positions can actually apply on your behalf to be a club coach. And then I'm going to mention this one to you as well. Now, even though the trio is one who turns in the application, they depend on you. They depend on the division directors, the area directors, people that are involved, because unless they live in the same area as you do, they have no clue. They're going to take your feedback and they're going to gather feedback from others. And even if it comes out that the person that you recommended did not get assigned, there's probably a reason for it. And it's not necessarily that you are not qualified to do it, but it's so important that the right personalities are fit together. One thing that I like to do is when I'm asked to be a club coach, I make sure that the club is okay. And this is done through the area director. The club is okay with me being a club coach, and that I'm good coaching that club. It has to be mutual because there's a lot of effort and a lot of work that happens. And if there's going to be some potential conflict or personalities just don't mesh, it's not going to work out so well. So the area directors are very, very crucial in helping to find the right person. Now, there are 5 steps in the club coach appointment process, and I'll go through them. There's a vote. The club members must hold a vote to obtain a coach. The purpose of voting is not to accept a specific individual, but rather to accept the responsibilities for having a coach for a minimum of 6 months. Once a club has voted in favor of needing a club coach, club officers reach out to their district leaders and ask for a coach. That's always been the case. Even though if you happen to be an area director and you see a great need, yeah, we want you to encourage them to consider it, but we can't force it. It's got to come from the club. They are the ones who ask, and it's got to be done through a vote. Then identify. District leaders assist clubs in identifying the potential club coach, which I already mentioned. Then club officers meet with the club coach and sign the club coach agreement. That is something new, and there's a link to it within the module. I've printed it out for my own benefit, but I think that's good. And request the district director sends a signed a club coach agreement to world headquarters, requesting that a coach be appointed. Then finally appointing. If all eligibility requirements are met, world headquarters processes the application, notifies the club, the coach, and the district leaders. And the term of club coach officially begins after world headquarters approve the appointment. The club coach, as always, gets a club coach pin to wear while they are coaching. A club coach receives credit. Okay. A club coach receives credit if they have been appointed by Toastmasters World Headquarters prior to their club coach term. Toastmasters likes to be repetitive. Served as a club coach for a minimum of 6 months and up to 2 years of the program service. Help the club reach distinguished status during their club term. Now, what that means is a minimum of 5 goals to be distinguished and a net gain of 5 members. Now, there's also an opportunity for club coaches to earn district leadership credit as if they were an area, division, or trio member. If you do all those things and get the club to charter strength, which is 20 members, you will also get that credit. A couple of years ago, it was if you served as a club coach and you became distinguished, you would get both of those. Now they make it a little bit more difficult. Now to receive coach credit, wait a minute. To receive credit, the coach must complete and submit the required documents. Club officers, district director must also complete a few tasks to ensure the club coach receives credit. We had mentioned the club coach agreement and to be signed by all involved. The district director must submit the club coach agreement to Toastmasters World Headquarters to ensure the club coach has been officially appointed. And you can find that under the Club Coach Program website. There's another new report, and it's a preliminary report is completed by the club coach within 30 days of the start date of their term. The club coach submits the report to the district director and club officers. I hate having to read things to you, but there's so much, and I think it's just at this point easier going through the bullet points. So there's a final report. The club coach completes the final report at the end of their term as club coach. The club coach submits the report to the district director and club officers. And then there's a response to an email from the world headquarters assuring those things. So an email is sent from world headquarters by the end of August after the conclusion of the program year. The district director and club president both confirm via email the club coach has completed their duties. Then finally, there's a club coach 360 evaluation. Those things are great because they assess how you think you did and how members thought you did as well. It is recommended that the club coach 360 evaluation is completed by each club officer after the club coach term has ended. Whether or not the club program. Now, after the coach and the officers have assessed the health of the club, they write an action plan. So you're meeting with the club, you're discussing some things, you're evaluating, then you come up with an action plan. What are they going to do? What is the actions taken? Kind of like we do with the club success plan. At minimum, the club action plan should include a focus on the quality of meetings, not just membership growth, but measurable objectives, a timeline, specific actions for individuals to take. Now, these are really great things and they're also required, but I might also add, it's very, very beneficial if you take the club success plan seriously and go through it with the officers, because that gets into more detail and it builds leadership and trust. Now, within the first 30 days of a club coach appointment, the club coach and the club officers have a formal meeting to set up expectations for their partnership. Okay. Each topic here discussing the club coach and the club officers during their first meeting. First of all, making the club aware of the purpose of the club coach program, the role of a club coach, expectations and communication between club officers and club coach, the strengths and weaknesses of the club, and ideas for improvement. You may not know all those strengths and weaknesses yet, but as a goal you work towards. Now, after the club coach signs a club coach agreement, they are responsible for submitting the club coach preliminary report to the district director within 30 days. I'm just repeating that because that could stop you from getting credit if you don't follow everything. Now, ending the club coach appointment, If a club wishes to remove a club coach for any reason, members must first vote on the removal. And if the vote passes, they must notify World Headquarters. If a club wishes to request a different individual as a coach, both the club and the new club coach must meet the qualifications for appointment and start the process over. Club coach can also resign at any time by notifying World Headquarters. Sometimes you find out the fit just doesn't work. And there's nothing to be embarrassed about. Clubs, if they're not going to get the full benefit of a club coach, they have every right to do so. However, it should be for a pretty good reason. Same thing for a club coach. They made a commitment, but if something is just not working well and they know it, they're going to have a polite conversation with the club. I think that's the best way to handle it. So during this whole process, we look at the core values of Toastmasters and keep them in mind. The integrity is the most important one, I think, because prior to these changes, and I think part of the reason for the changes, you get a club coach come in, they get a whole bunch of paper members, friends of theirs, because you only need a net gain of 5, sign them all up, and guess what? You get credit. Well, have you helped the club grow? Have you done a disservice to them? So integrity is important, that you put in an honest effort towards these things. We respect each other, of course. And you think about how can I provide service? Because we're servant leaders, aren't we? So how can we provide service to the club within the club coach program? Excellence, how can we demonstrate excellence and recognize excellence? Now, as a famous personality, radio personality, Paul Harvey used to say, and now the rest of the story. That is a good overview of the program according to the module. Now we're going to talk about what it really takes. And I'm going to use a little bit of candor here because I've dealt with it from experience. And there's some things in that module that aren't covered there. And I want to make sure you're aware. First of all, it's important that we all understand, whether it be Toastmasters or another organization, another not-for-profit, all organizations have a life cycle. We've probably experienced that. Sometimes that happens in clubs. Clubs that have been around for 30 years or so, they have the same faithful 8 members, and they don't really grow that much. They can't figure it out. They're a great club. They get along with each other and they do add value, but they're not growing. To combat the decline, I'm going to suggest that we all adapt this. Always be mission-minded. I say that in my leadership role at church as well. Be mission-minded. And what does it mean to be mission-minded? It isn't necessarily to fill every seat in the room, but to add value to everyone. Mission-minded, let's reinvent that pioneering spirit that we had when we started our clubs, if you were involved with that. And the mission is to grow yourselves and to help others grow. And to be there for one another and support one another. Because you know what? Many times with clubs, they say, for instance, they have a membership problem. Maybe they do, but likely they have a leadership problem that needs to be addressed. And by focusing on the club success plan, you can overcome those things. With the club that I coached to President's Distinguished in less than a year, we spent a lot of our time at officers' meetings going through the club success plan. I didn't even care about how many goals they were going to reach the end of the success plan. I wanted to make sure we built leadership acumen. And by doing that, ask those questions and get honest answers. How are you going to handle conflict? How are you going to respond and communicate with one another? See, with club coaching, yes, you show up to meetings, you're there, you're supporting the club, you're answering questions if you're asked directly. But I believe the real growth is working with the officers, or working with them at the officers meeting. The club that I coached, I'll quickly tell you the story because then we can relate things to it. I received a phone call from our division director, Mahala, and she said, Paul, can you and maybe Mary come over to Central Communicators 802 because tonight they're voting on dissolving the club. I need your support. So I showed up, and they were to that time when they were calling for a vote. And I'm so proud of Mahala. She goes, no, we're not going to let you close. We're going to work with you. And in that parking lot that night, one of the current president, he came up to me and he goes, why do you want to help us? I said, because you're worth it. Every club is worth it. Every member is worth it. We have to keep that in mind. That's part of being mission mindset. You see, this club had a club coach for over 2 years. And the only thing they heard from that club coach is, we need more members. We need more members. The problem was they weren't ready for more members. They would have people come in, they join and never come back because their leadership acumen was so low, their leadership lid was so low that they couldn't attract people that would help them grow. And they had some kind of odd policies, and over time we overcame some of those things. Walked in the meeting, they didn't have printed agendas. They had a bulletin board, a dry erase board, and as people walked in, oh, I can do this, I can do that, I can do that. They didn't have officer meetings, but instead they started each meeting with club business and actually officer business and complaining about the international and so on and so forth. So one of the early meetings, I asked them, if you were a guest at this club and you saw that happening, you saw people arguing, and it took 15 minutes to get the meeting going, would you want to come back? They honestly said, probably not. I said, why do you do it? See, you're their eyes and ears. And every Toastmasters club has blinders. Every member that's been in a club for just a little bit have developed blinders. We focus on the narrow vision of what we do well, and we don't always see the whole picture. One of the beauties of having a club coach is you have someone come in with a broader sense of vision that can see things. And yet the secret that I found out is, and I did this too, I had a page and a half of things that needed to be corrected, but that isn't my role to give them a list. My goal was to help build them up. And when we talked, I said, what's the most important thing that we can do as a club for improvement? And what's the most important thing? And one of our members, Steve, he said, well, it's the member experience. I said, very good. Now let's work on that. In the club, did this all on their own. I get credit for being a club coach. I get credit for taking them from that low point in their life as a club, being president's distinguished, but really all I did was facilitate. And I encouraged them, and I asked questions that they had to answer, and they really started thinking about it. So the other thing is that what I try to instill not only in clubs that I coach, in every club, it's so important to be intentional. There's such a thing as good intentions, New Year's resolutions, Club success plans. Yeah, I believe we can be presidents distinguished. All we have to do is give this person, this person, this person to give awards, and we've got it, without even talking to the person, without getting them involved. So we need to be intentional, because you know what? Wishful thinking, a lot of people have wishful thinking, good intentions, but wishful thinking is not a strategy. And we have to keep that in mind. Being intentional is. So this club, it went all the way to President's Distinguished. Now it was with the help of myself and Mahala, because at that time we could join. But I told them that I'll be their last member. I was not going to join. And that's, I think, a wise thing for Toastmasters to do, is not allow people to be members of a club. Because once you become a member, you narrow your vision, your scope. And the purpose of a club is not being a member, is to help members grow and achieve success, not only that year, but the years to come. The true test is, how does a club do the following year? Do they accomplish the same sort of things? And I'm proud to say, with Central Communicators, the following year, they became President's Distinguished again. Then the next year, someone became the president of the club. That wonderful person, but not a real leader. And they didn't do as well the next year. So I guess I'll take this opportunity here, because it's something that we need to instill in all of our clubs, and especially those that we are coaching. And that is, we need to have a succession plan in place. In any club, most clubs have a pretty good indication who the next president's going to be. Make that president part of the nomination committee. It's so important, because if they are going to lead a club, it's important that they help choose at least the initial slate. Of course, we give members opportunity to nominate, and it's never a guarantee that the slate is going to take it home, but it's so very important. So they start thinking ahead of the game. The other experience that I had, I was a member of a club in Saginaw, Michigan. We had a strong sense of leadership when I first joined. As life happened, people moved away, people retired, so on and so forth. And we always had compliments. This is such a comfortable, welcoming club. And we didn't hear from anyone, and we couldn't see for ourselves what the problem was. So I was a president at that time. So I had to consider recommending getting a club coach. You know what? That was hard. I mean, I was already a district leader. I was an area director. I was a club growth director, and I should be able to do it on my own. There's a sense of pride there that we think we can do it on our own. But finally I said, you know what? I think we need to do that. And we were assigned 2 club coaches, and they did a wonderful job. They took us through the moments of truth. We met weekly, every week. They took turns on one of the moments, and we discussed it for 5-6 minutes, and it was good. But the thing that really saved us was the club coaches invited in a person that had never been to the club, lived about 45 minutes away. He just visited. Then we got the feedback. He said, this is a really friendly club and it's fun, but you probably have too much fun. And it made me think, you're right. He was right. We lost some of the focus. It's important to have fun at our meetings. We all love to go to fun meetings, but we need that structure. We need about 75% structure, maybe 25% fun. We were missing out on the structure, and we had a member who was very generous, and if someone was having a rough time, he would pay for their membership. But he liked to run things his own way. And sometimes that happens in clubs. You get a person that is the leader in the club, not necessarily the president, but the leader in the club. And you know what? Sometimes they are the toxic person that's holding the club back. And those kind of things are really tough to deal with. But sometimes we have to. As club coaches, we are not their supervisors. We cannot make decisions for the club, but we can encourage them in new directions. How am I doing on time, by the way? Keith, if you could tell me
Yep,
how I'm
sorry.
doing.
Yep. Yeah, well, you could probably wrap up pretty soon.
Okay, why don't we do that? Because I can, as people that know me, I can go on and on for hours. But I want to give you an opportunity to ask some questions, whether about the program or from experiences. Just go for it. And I don't know how, because I can only see so many people. Maybe Keith, you can help me out if you see raised hands.
Yep, absolutely. So I had put everyone on mute while you were talking because we did have a few other conversations going on outside of the meeting. So if you want to talk, like Yuri's doing, use the upraised hand, and let's see if I can. Very good. You do have the ability to unmute yourself. So Yuri, why don't you get us started since you have a question?
Okay, thank you, Keith. Thank you, Paul, for sharing with us the new updates. My question is, from your experience, what someone who is trying to be a club coach for the first time, what are some of the challenges they may have, as well as the club who is having a club coach for the first time? What are some of the challenges or initial kind of forming, storming kind of thing that they go through before they begin to work together to achieve the agreed upon results?
That's a very good question. And whenever anything is new to anybody, there can be challenges. We can go through the module, we can read everything available to us, and still we're walking in not sure of what to expect. And that's why if you are a first-time coach, hopefully we can assign 2 coaches. That's not always possible because we have quite a few clubs that need them, and I'm not privy to know how many requests that are out there, but it can be challenging. What I'd like to do is pair somebody up that has a little bit of experience with someone that just wants to get their feet wet, and they go in as a team to work together. Or maybe try to find someone, perhaps we can come up with a list of those who have coached before and seek out a mentor to help you out. And not necessarily show up to the meetings with you, but to be there for you and that you can call and ask the questions for. Because I don't have all the answers. I have some of them, but I don't know all the answers. There's probably a situation that would make me scratch my head as well. But try to do that. Try to partner up with someone that has experience, and don't be afraid to ask them to mentor you.
Very good.
Any other questions?
Thanks, Yuri. I've got a question. So I was the club coach chair last year. Actually, it might have been the last 2 years. But it, one of the big challenges I saw was getting clubs to recognize that A, they're eligible, and then B, to actually raise their hand and say, yeah, we need a coach. What do you think are some of the barriers to clubs doing that, and how might we surmount them?
Well, I think part of the barrier is no one wants to feel like a failure. They think that they should be able to do it on their own. There's the pride thing as well. well, I know we don't need a club coach. We can do this. And, a lot of it has to do with the personality of the president of the club. I had a situation where a president of club, even though the members really wanted a club coach, because I've talked to some of them, but the president didn't want it to happen. He made sure it didn't happen. And so that's part of it too. So maybe suggest that they actually take this module that's available to us so they can learn a little bit. And it's not like we're assigned because they're failing. We're assigned to help them out, to bring value to them, like I said before. So that's a tough one, and we can't force it. All we can do is encourage and maybe share some examples of as a club coach chair, you probably have a few clubs that weren't sure they really wanted a club coach, but once they got one, boy, they were so thankful for the experience. Something like that, keeping it positive. And it's not that they're failing, they just need improvement. Just like when we have brand new officers in our club, sometimes they maybe don't follow through as much as you think they should in their position. Most of the time is because they don't understand their position. They need to be trained and helped. Susan, she's a club president of her club, and she knows what I'm going through right now as sergeant at arms. I used to be the simplest job in Toastmasters, not so much now with hybrid meetings. And I frankly don't get it that much. And the people that do haven't been able to be at meetings. So it's a matter of growth and helping each other out.
Yeah. Considering the number of clubs that have folded in the last few years, it appears most are willing to fail rather than ask for help.
Yeah. And it is, I know that not everyone agrees with this opinion. I think it's much easier to start a club than to save a club. But I don't like to call them struggling clubs. I like to call them future distinguished clubs. That's why we're there. We're not there to help them fail. We're there to help them get better and to improve.
Right. Thank you. Krista, you had your hand up next. You want to come off mute and share your...
I did.
Yeah.
And I apologize. I have a 5-year-old who really wanted a hug from mom before.
That's
so
all right.
that was totally me.
You can bring her on if you want. We like kids.
I had my husband put her to bed, so it's all good.
Okay.
My question, just because I'm a first-time president and we're really stressing setting goals with the club success program, when is the optimal time to get a club coach involved, in your opinion?
Okay, so mathematically, if you look at the 6-month thing or the 2 years, yeah, but I would say as soon as you recognize the need and the desire from your club to go ahead and get a hold of the club growth director is probably the first one, or talk to your area director, but they're going to refer you to the club growth director because sometimes assignments can't happen immediately. We don't have a plethora of people on board right now that, hey, I want an opportunity to be a club coach, even though right now, even an in-person is helpful. With most clubs now being hybrid, it's easy for me to coach a club in Madison where I couldn't do that when it was before times. But go ahead, and if your club wants that, and I would encourage, again, I keep repeating myself, have your club officers look at that module, take it, so they can see more what it's about. And that might help them out. And if you need me to give a speech at your club talking about the benefits without going through the boring details like we did before, I'll be more than happy to. And I'm sure other people in the district who have coached would be more than willing to do that too. And maybe share some success stories.
Right.
Thank you.
Very good. Cindy, you had your hand up.
Yes, hi. Hey, Paul.
Hi.
I taught a club coach session years ago at a TLI, and I had several people come up and go, I can't be a club coach because I need to know everything. And I posted this in my comments, and I said, you know, when Toastmasters year turn, the president of International starting cold. International directors, they're all looking at the manual and starting cold. Region advice, everybody. So I always say that you don't need to know everything, but you need to be good at being an unbiased listener and an
There you
observer
go. I
of
love it.
behavior. And then
Love it.
the thing that I told one gentleman is, don't worry, you don't need to know every answer. You just need to be 5 minutes ahead of the club. So you just need to be kind of forwardly moving. And then I really liked kind of the general thought about that people think critiqued or they feel it's criticism. And that's why I try to make everything future focused. You don't ever
Yeah,
talk about what happened because you can't change what happened, but you can say, hey, the next time this comes around, or when you work on the next thing. So you kind of plant those little seeds. But yeah, I would agree with you. It's all about listening. And for the coach, it's sort of like stepping off and going, I just need to be 5 minutes ahead.
yeah. And it's okay for us coaches to say, I don't know. I'm gonna find the answer for you. Thank you for that question.
Yep.
But
yep.
I love your comment, and a lot of people think they're not qualified. But you know what? I don't know how many clubs I helped start, at least 20. I don't know what the number is. But every club has to have brand new officers for the first time. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. But there's more growth in that first year than any other year later on. And it's okay not to know. What you have to have is you have to have heart. If you have heart, you're going to do just fine being a club coach. And if you're doing it just so you can get a credit, even though I need club coaches, I'm going to say maybe consider something different. Because if you do it because you care and you act out of love towards other people, you'll be successful whether the club reaches their goal or not. There's growth. And it's going to help you as a club coach grow as well. Because like they say a lot of times, if you ever want to learn something well, just go ahead and teach it. Right? Same concept. Thank you for that question. Or comment.
Yeah, I'll echo your comments, Paul. If someone's considering being a coach because they see it as one of the ways they can become a distinguished Toastmaster, you probably picked the hardest one. So
Yeah.
go go mentor a new club, or there's other things you can do other than being club coach. That's it takes a special kind of person to you use the expression servant leader. It takes somebody who really wants to serve and help. All right, what other questions or comments, observations? Have you seen good coaching experiences, bad coaching experiences? What not to do, maybe?
Paul, you mentioned something about a 360 evaluation, and it sounds like you served club coach in at least 3 different districts based on my experience. What kind of feedback did you receive from clubs, and maybe focusing for how you grew from the experience? What is a strength that you discover based on the feedback you now think you have more of? What on the other hand, what is something that was shared with you that from your standpoint you did not know or thought that it would be good to improve on?
All right. That's a loaded question there, but I'm going to try my best here. Some of the feedback that I got was they appreciated what I brought to the table to them. Successes, of course, they're going to be happy with them. I coached a club. It was, I don't know if you ever heard of Discovery Channel. Their headquarters one of their headquarters in Knoxville, Tennessee. These members did a fantastic job. They had the equipment, they created their own demos, just wonderful people. It's a small group. But what had happened is before that, they were Scripps Network. They got bought out by Discovery and they lost a whole bunch of good people. And then now they're being bought out by Warner. And I said, this is a great opportunity. Let's get with them and start building this up. Oh, we're not allowed to talk to anyone at Warner until after everything is complete. Now, these folks have gone through so much. They saved their jobs last time. That's what's on their mind. And they just said, you know what? You're right with some of your advice, but we just have to take a break until this merger happens. And I respected that. And that's okay. It wasn't that I failed as a club coach or Regina failed as a club coach. Not at all. But it's one of those learning things. The one lesson that I did have to learn, and we'll all have to learn, is, and we've all taken the module, what's the difference between a coach and a mentor? I know we've all taken them, and at least all the past we've done. It's harder being a coach. It's harder being a listener. I'm a guy, so I like to give advice, okay? My wife says, I just want to tell you about something. I don't need your advice how I need to handle it. So I'm used to that. It was really hard for me to get into the coaching mode. And I want to tell them, no, don't do that. But I intentionally did not speak. I mean, I did not give criticism or feedback at club meetings unless I was directly asked. I would get involved. I would give speeches. I would take on roles, those sort of things, anything to help them out. But the real growth happens with the officers, because once you help the officers out, then they can take over themselves. They're the ones building the club. As coaches, we're gone in 6 months or 2 years. We're gone. And if you do too much, that club is going to fall apart as soon as you leave. I didn't officially coach a club because I was a member of it. It was an advanced club in Knoxville. And I had been involved in advanced clubs that were really good, really true advanced clubs. But this particular club was really a club that met once a month and just acted like any other club. And I was thinking to myself, I don't think I'm going to renew. If I'm going to spend money to join a club, I might as well go to one that meets weekly or every other week, because I'm not really seeing a big benefit. One of the members that I told that to, he said, no, Paul, please stay. We want you to be the president the next year. I said, okay, I'll stay and be, nominated as a president, and no guarantees in life. But with one exception, I want to make sure we're on a provision. I want to make sure I'm involved with that slate of officers, like I had mentioned before. And we got a solid slate, people that were committed. We took that club success plan more seriously than any other club has. We reviewed it all the time when it was done, and we stuck to our guns. We met once a month. So one of our goals was to have an open house every other month. And when one of the members said, well, why do we have to have another open house? Because that's what we agreed to in the club success plan. That club had never been even distinguished. Guess what they became? President's Distinguished. The next year, Mary took over. She was the VP of Education that first year. Guess what? President's Distinguished. See, what happens a lot of times in advanced clubs is they're members of other clubs, so they give awards to them. But they're robbing this club of the value that they can bring to others. So I don't know if that answered the question or not.
No,
All right, good.
It's fine. I think more than anything, I just like to understand how all you think. And again, it can't be a loaded question, but I just want to hear your response, and some of the example you shared are probably more valuable than if you just gave us like specific examples of strengths. I
Right.
think your answer was more than answer the question.
Good.
Good. Thanks. All right. Next up is Tony. You want to come off mute, Tony?
I just came off of mute.
There we go.
I have a very humble question.
Okay.
This, how do you challenge as a coach people's commitment to a club actually being a club? By that, there are some people say, we want a social club. They don't necessarily mean they want a club where people set goals and proceed to follow through on the goals. How do you move people from not caring about accomplishments to being people who are concerned about accomplishments as a reflection of value?
Yeah. I think John Maxwell says it best. Everything rises and falls on leadership. It's the leadership of the club that set the pace. One of the requirements that I have, which is not a Toastmaster requirement, but one I do, is every club officer, all 7, have to agree to go to training twice a year. They have to agree that while I'm a club coach, that we meet once a month as officers, and separate from the meeting, it's got to be on a different day. And then even just by doing that, they kind of set the example. And some people will just want a social club. And there's not a lot you can do with it other than raise the bar for the club. Social clubs have a tendency to just give free willy speeches without getting Pathways credit. They tend to not take the evaluation process seriously. As Lance Miller said, if you want to become a great speaker, become a greater evaluator. So we build that up and encourage in that way. I think that every club represented tonight, whether you need a club coach or not, miss some opportunities sometimes. How many times do we have a speaker that simply does not show up? Something happens. Every officer should be ready with this. With our, it can be done through Speechcraft program if you still have an old manual. They have those educational sessions, 5 minutes each time you meet. Have each officer give one of those whenever you have an opening. It's really important for club coaches to encourage that. And maybe if you give a speech, one of those speeches would be beneficial. But look at those things. It makes the entire club grow, and it makes you think. Because some of those things aren't necessarily clearly laid out in Pathways. They're there, but they're hidden. So just how do you have control in the room, the pauses, everything that was in the old program is still in the Speechcraft materials. Utilize those. And by building up and raising the bar, raising the expectation, if someone wants to give a speech and they say, oh, I'm just going to practice something today, what path are you going to get credit for? And be bold and say, I'm sorry, but we have to follow Pathways. That's how we raise the bar and keep it high, because that's what keeps members going and coming back all the time. I don't know if I answered your question or not, Tony.
You did perfectly, but then the big question becomes, how do you take people who aren't committed to being at meetings all the time? Sometimes they're new people. They don't want to deliver speeches all the time. They cancel at the next moment, at the last moment. And how do you instill in people a commitment to making them successful?
That's really a good, valid question. Invite them out for coffee. Have a personal conversation. Say, hey, can we meet next week? I just want to have a conversation with you. Kind of do what we do with our, someone can help me the name of it, where you where you submit what your goals are that year and what you're going to achieve. What's it called? We just did one at our club. I forget what it's called, but
Moments of truth.
not that one where
Ever
you
perform?
send out the questionnaire, member survey.
Oh.
Member interest survey.
Okay,
Member
but you don't need a member survey to do that. You need to talk to them. Say, hey, you know what? I've been in Toastmasters a long time. I'm a little concerned because I don't see you that much. What are your goals and how can I personally help you reach those? We have to be friends to each other in that way. That's the only thing I can suggest because we can't force it on people. And chances are, if we don't reach out to them, try to help them out, they're going to leave. They're not going to renew next time.
Okay, that great question. We are at time right now, but Todd's had his hand up. He's been waiting
Oh.
patiently. If you have some time, can we address Todd's point?
Yeah, I have plenty of time and I'll try to be brief since we're
Okay.
Go ahead, Todd.
Okay, thank you for taking my question. So my question was, how do you teach or grow leadership in the club? Obviously, you've referenced John Maxwell a couple times in your presentation. I actually have like the 21 Laws of Leadership video on VHS presentation from years ago. And I wanted to actually run that as a, once a month kind of teach one of the laws in our club. And I was shot down that we shouldn't use other organizations' training material inside Toastmasters. That's my first question. My second question is, instead of just having one coach or two coaches, I know that most people are doing it or not doing it for the credit. Why can we not have a team of people who would help multiple clubs in a period of a year? Because some clubs hang on with the 4 or 5 members because nobody takes the responsibility and takes them out of the equation. I said years ago we should call it a SWAT team. It's speakers with abilities, talents, and time who show ways, activities, and techniques to grow, sustain, maintain club speakers and leaders. And that group of people, which would be like, say, 7 people, because it would be one person who would buddy with each of the executive, the room would automatically grow from 7 to possibly 14 any night that they showed up, or at least maybe 12 if only 5 of them came. But the room would automatically grow and be bigger. And in a period of 3 months, they would stay at a club, do some open houses, and hopefully get the group growing and going. And then if it needed to be, they could just recommend to the district to remove or sustain or maintain or like make it go longer if they needed to. But that group could then move on to another club, work with that club, and go like that. So I don't know what your thoughts on
That's great. Your first question, I think it's hogwash that you say you can't use other materials, because what I do is I'm a student of leadership. I'll listen to Maxwell, Simon Sinek, other people, and then I apply some of those principles to Toastmasters. And I think that's good because with your speeches, you can speak about anything you want as long as you're respectful and follow all that kind of criteria. But that'd be fantastic. I love the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. I just bought the new book and I haven't got in it too far yet because I haven't had time, but that's a great one. The other thing really quickly, you are thinking the same way I am. There is something that I like to call club swarming. And each area, say it's got 6 clubs, each club can be given a month where they'll get extra visitors, guests from other clubs. They can do open houses. They can learn from those things. So you're thinking in the same way. Why don't you talk to the district leadership and see if we can get something like that going? I think those are fantastic ideas. Yeah, great job asking that.
All right, very good. As I mentioned before, we are a little bit over on time, so we'll wrap it up right here. I'd like to thank Paul for his time tonight, and it's a timely topic. Certainly, as you mentioned right at the onset, 2/3 of our clubs need coaches, so great topic. This is being recorded, so please spread the word around to, if you're an area division director, spread the word around to your clubs, and if you're club officers or club members, share the information that you learned here. And maybe if you need a club, maybe if you need a club coach, have that discussion, have a vote to ask for one, and maybe you've been inspired to serve as a club coach, or maybe you know
And
someone.
if they are, who do they contact?
They can contact any member of the trio, but our club growth director is Robert Wall, and
Yeah.
his contact information is in
On the website, right?
is on the district website.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
right.
Well, very good.
And-
Thanks for everyone's time tonight. Thanks again, Paul.
All right, thank you.
Thanks,
All right.
everyone.
Yep. Bye-bye.